How's it going, Rangers and overall hockey fans? Thank you guys so much for chiming in. This is episode 43 of Rangers Review. Myself, Tyler. Many of you guys know me from Wardy NYM covering the New York Mets. And we also have Steven, Statboy Steven, good friend here, as we're going to be breaking down everything that transpired for the Rangers over their past 4 games, because last time we spoke was right around the holidays before the new year and everything. So I hope everyone had a very happy and healthy holiday, whatever holiday you may celebrate, and same thing with your new year. And now that we're in 2022, the Rangers have so far so good. Off to a great start over their past 4 games. The one game that we expected the Rangers to play that we put in our predictions from last episode did not transpire is the game against Montreal Canadiens. As many of you guys know by now, that got postponed. So our predictions, they won't be accurate, because I know last week I think I went 2-1-2 over the Rangers 5 games. Steven, I think you said 3-1-1 if I had to guess. So either way, you were closer with yours, and you got the exact number of goals that you expected the Rangers to score, just over one less game, that being with 15. So you can keep the title. I'll let you have it. It's perfectly fine. But overall, Rangers did really well during this stretch. Exciting episode to get into. So whether you're watching this live, thank you guys so much for being here in the live stream on YouTube. We'll be taking your comments and questions towards the end of the episode in our Q&A segment. And if you're listening on replay on either YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, thank you guys so much for that as well. But Steven, let's just get right in. How are you? Happy holiday, happy new year to you. And yeah, let's just dive into this one.
Yeah, happy new year to you, to everyone who's listening, to every Rangers fan. Hopefully 2022 will bring more luck and better performances by the Rangers than 2021. I think they're on a roll the last couple of games, so let's hope they can build on that. But yeah, let's dive into it. What do we? The last game we did, was it the Vegas Golden Knights?
Yes, because that was the last one until they would then play the Habs.
Yeah, and then we and then the Red Wings game was also postponed on January 2nd.
Correct. Yes. That's
or what? Not last week. Was it December 27th? I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't remember. Yeah. Anyway, they had a game against the Red Wings that was postponed. So they had a tough schedule the last 4 games. Playing against 4 playoff teams, or 3 playoff teams, 4 games. But yeah, pretty good result overall. You want me to dive into the first 2 games?
Yeah, let's dive in. But before we do, I already see someone comment in the live stream how you were a jinx from the goal they gave up last night. And we are going to go in a little bit of a segment at some point in the episode regarding your jinxes and how this needs to stop. I don't know. I think maybe it's a culture barrier thing. I don't understand you with jinxing the Rangers nonstop, Steven. It actually happens. So no, you do not deserve an apology. Stop it. We're going to get into it. Not yet, though. We're going to hold that segment.
I do deserve an apology for the shutout, jinx, because we did get the shutout. Anyway, so first game, Rangers against the Panthers. First game of their Florida road trip. Started out really well for the Rangers. Panarin with a highlight reel goal, making Aaron Ekblad look like a fool on defense.
He always does that to Bobrovsky, his good friend.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, in the pregame, Sam Rosen and Joe Micheletti were talking about how Florida Panther fans and their brass consider Aaron Ekblad a Norris candidate, and then Artemi Panarin pulls that out of his hat. It was unbelievable. So yeah, good start from the Rangers. The Panarin goal was assisted by Strome and Trouba. But then in the second period, they give one up against Anton Lundell. Libor Hayek was caught off guard in the crease, couldn't cover in time. So the rookie Lundell ties it up 1-1. And then in the second period, it's the Rangers again with capitalizing on a mistake, which they've been doing lately. Whenever our opponents make mistakes the last couple of games, they have been capitalizing on them. Similar here. Gudas has his stick lifted by Panarin, passes it to Zibanejad for an open net, makes it 2-1. And then the third period, you think the Rangers are going to pull it out of that, going to pull the win out of it. They had I think an 8-0-2 record, taking a lead into the third period, or 10-0-2. So they hadn't lost in regulation, taking a lead into the third period. Everything looked good. Sam Rosen mentioned it, but then the Florida Panthers, with Mackenzie Weegar scoring the game-tying goal, Carter Verhaeghe with a massive wrist shot on a really good pass from Radko Gudas, and then Anthony Duclair. Former Rangers tend to do well when they play us. Duclair making it 4-2. Rangers pull the goalie. Kreider gets one to get us within 4-3, but unfortunately we couldn't get the win against the Florida Panthers. Igor Shesterkin, 32 shots against, 28 saves. I think Shesterkin, aside from the Carter Verhaeghe goal, was good. I think the Verhaeghe goal he wants back, but other than that, nothing to. I don't think there was enough there to put the loss on Shesterkin. But it was a wake-up call for the Rangers, and it was the start of a tough stretch. They had, of course, Vegas Golden Knights that they lost in I think in a shootout, and then this was one of the 4 games against a really tough opponent. Unfortunately, they couldn't make it to OT, but I think still getting your goals in, losing 4-3 to the Florida Panthers is not really anything to be ashamed about. And then, of course,
before you
the
jump to the second game, I just want to add a couple things here quick.
Sure.
One thing, Rangers outshot the Panthers in that one, 33-32. They did lose in the faceoff dot, which made you think maybe the Rangers were going to win that game. But all jokes aside, didn't happen. Hits, Rangers got out hit 40-30, and giveaways were in the favor of the Rangers, and only giving away 6 to Panthers 18. This game was frustrating for me personally, just because it felt like one that the Rangers very well could have had, and then they just unraveled completely in the third period. And I know that Igor did give up a soft goal there, but still, that was one where, unfortunately, kind of continued the narrative that I know that you've not a narrative, I should say, but just the facts that the Rangers have not done well to this point throughout the season against good teams, at least teams that are of similar level, if not better. Thankfully, that started to change against those games in Tampa that we'll be getting into here in a second, but definitely a little bit of a frustrating one. It was great to see Panarin have a good game, but overall, it was awesome to see how resilient the Rangers would be after this against some very 2 teams that very well they could have lost to. If maybe this was a week prior or something like that. So overall, I'm happy with where the Rangers go from here. And I do want to address a donation in the chat from Tom. Tom, thank you so much for the $10 donation. Really appreciate that. It says, Happy New Year. Thanks for the great content. Thank you so much, Tom. Same to you. Question, does Zach Jones earn his permanent spot on this roster? Tom, I'm going to take that, and hopefully you stay throughout the episode. We're going to address that in a little bit. We have a lot to say on Zach Jones. He is one of, if not the biggest topic of discussion that we'll be breaking down in Rangers Review episode 43. But again, Tom, thank you so much for the donation. In a nutshell, I do want Zach Jones to stay with the Rangers. Whether he will or not has yet to be seen. But Steven, back to you with the game against Edmonton.
No. First, the game against Tampa Bay Lightning.
Pardon me. You're right. I got the games confused real quick.
Yeah.
I'm thinking
they had a back-to-back against Tampa Bay Lightning, with the first game on New Year's Eve in Tampa, and this Tampa Bay Lightning team was there for the Rangers to beat and get 2 points off of. They were still without Vasilevsky. They were still without Cirelli. So and Kucherov, of course. So they were missing some significant players. Of course, Vasilevsky and Cirelli would be there for the second game between the Rangers and the Tampa Bay Lightning on January 2nd. But this game on New Year's Eve for me was the first game of the new year, because puck drop was at midnight. So the first thing I did in the new year was watch the Rangers, and I watched the Rangers win. And yeah, I was thrilled that we were able to beat the 2-time Stanley Cup champion. I think Barclay Goodrow in the last 3 games, starting with this one, has been lights out for the Rangers. I think he has 5 points in the last 3 games. And this game, they conceded an early goal by Like first period goal by Steven Stamkos on the power play, assisted by Hedman and Palat. All familiar names for people that have been following the NHL for the last couple of years. No surprises there. And then in the second period, we got some huge help from Brian Elliott, former Flyers goalie, who was in net for Vasilevsky this game. Early in the second period, goes behind the net, tries to play the puck and plays it straight onto Lafreniere's stick, who doesn't hesitate and puts it in the empty net.
That's the Laffy staple. I feel like every single goal that Lafreniere scores, it's either, right in front, maybe he gets a snipe every now and then, or it's open net. And I will say it is nice to see someone know how to nail the open net every single time it's made right.
Lafreniere is not scoring highlight reel goals, but he's always in the right position. When he does score his goals, he does have the instinct to be there where the puck's going to be. So that's a good sign. So he has 7th goal of the season, his 19th of his short career so far. And then later on, shorthanded, Barclay Goodrow, assisted by Greg McKegg. And then, that's when really things started turning around for the Rangers. Brian Elliott gave basically. Ross Colton tied it up late in the second. And then in the third period, a goal each, won by the Rangers. Again, Barclay Goodrow with his second of the game, assisted by Keandre Miller and Artemi Panarin. We almost pulled out a regulation win, and then Corey Perry tied it up with 2 minutes to go, assisted by Stamkos and Palat. And then we went to the shootout because there was no goal in overtime. And this is where you could see Mika Zibanejad getting back into the groove. He went back to his signature move in the final attempt. Tampa Bay missed all 3 attempts. For the Rangers, Kakko and Panarin missed, and Zibanejad pulled it off on our third attempt, getting us the shootout win. And the Rangers end 2021 on a high note. And some numbers here. Shesterkin only faced 28 shots, saved 25 of them, so gave up 3 goals. 0.893 save percentage. And Brian Elliott only faced 23 shots, only saved 20 of them. So his save percentage was a little lower than that. Most notable on the Rangers, aside from that, is the time on ice. Adam Fox with 30 minutes and 52 seconds in that game. 30 minutes. He played a half an hour in that one game. They heavily relied on Adam Fox, as we are used to by now. But this was, for me, the showdown between Hedman and Fox. To me, the top 2 defensemen in the league at the moment, together with Cale Makar. They went into the game tied for most points in the calendar year. Unfortunately for Adam Fox, Hedman notched another point in this game, so he finishes the calendar year with most points by a defenseman. But the Rangers still pull out the win in a shootout and getting the final 2 points of 2021.
Yeah, that game in itself was a huge win. Just a great bounce back overall. To lose in the fashion that you did against Florida, there's been this kind of narrative for the Rangers throughout plenty games this year where they've struggled to close things out. They sit back, they get a little too comfortable, whether they have a lead or whether it's close going into the third. So to see them kind of bounce back the way that they did, Barclay Goodrow, I always mess up how to properly go about his name, and I don't mean it personal. Just it throws me off. No less, he did a great job against Tampa. It wouldn't be the last time he did a good job against Tampa as we get into the game following up right after that. But to see him step up, you knew he had a fire under his ass. He was with the Tampa Bay Lightning. He got the nice tribute there, of course, for winning back-to-back cups.
Don't forget. They had a little ceremony before the game where he was given his Stanley Cup ring.
Exactly. Yeah. Tampa's been doing that, of course, all year with their former players. Same thing with Yanni Gord. I remember when they did that for him a little while ago. So great to see. Again, it was just even better to see Goodrow really try to step up his game a little bit. Not that you need to go against your former teams in order to do so, but no less anything to benefit this club right now. I've been liking what I'm seeing from him. He helps out in a lot of different ways, both offensively and defensively. So great to see. And the Rangers then go into their second game against Tampa. And this was a huge one as well. And the biggest thing to go into this game were two things. It was one, Artemi Panarin being out because he was put in COVID protocol, unfortunately. Ryan Lindgren was not a part of this game either, which means that, yes, Zach Jones was making his season debut. Jones, who had a handful of games played in the past season, he played 10 games. I think he had 4 points, all being assists, was coming in for his first of the year. We've all been antsy waiting to see Jones in this lineup because he's had a great start with the Wolfpack. I believe he had at least 17 points in 20-plus games with them so far this season in the AHL, so he was really looking good. And he comes in and gets paired with Niels Lundqvist right away, and that's something that I would love to see as a long-term pair potentially, but I know that you and I have had our concerns with if they're going to bring up Jones, it would make more sense on paper, at least, to say have him not paired with Niels because you have two youngsters, especially that lack NHL experience at this point, and also have similar play styles to a certain extent. So maybe you put having Niels with Keandre and instead Trouba with Jones, which might be something we see in the future. But I will say defense was not too much of a liability with Jones or Niels in this game, respectively. And while the shots were definitely lopsided in this one, Tampa outshot the Rangers 38-21. It's the type of shot selection that was so pivotal. And of course, Igor Shesterkin's just unbelievable performance, just doing an absolute showdown, locking it up, making highlight reel glove saves, doing his best Hank impression. And so did Georgiev in the game against Edmonton. I feel like every single time we see that leather flash, all I think about is Henrik right away. It's so weird. I know that it's been a couple years now, but I'm still getting acclimated and adjusted to this new era of Rangers goaltending. But Igor was phenomenal, but the even bigger story was the power play and Mika Zibanejad. Zibby gets the goal scoring started in the first period, right around, halfway mark or so in the game. He gets in the left dot for his 9th of the year. Beautiful snipe. And that was assisted by both Fox and Kreider. I believe Kreider did have the screen in front too, which helped things. It was just a beautiful goal, textbook that you get from Zibanejad in that left dot. And Rangers power play continued to thrive as it has been for a bit now throughout the season. Then we get into the second goal, and it's only four minutes after this one, 4 to 5 minutes, because Zibanejad scores his second of the game, this time being assisted again by Fox and Kreider. Deja vu, it looks like, on the power play again. Awesome to see that Zibanejad gets 2 goals there. And then Ryan Strome in the first period taps one on, gets one in for his 7th of the year, assisted by Gaudreau, who had a really nice pass, his 8th assist of the year. At that point, Rangers are already up 3-0 in this one against the Tampa Bay Lightning, who they beat in their previous game. And then we get in the second period as well, and Zibanejad just continues to add to the goal scoring. This one was awesome, and that would be his 11th of the year, assisted by Kreider. Reverse roles the prior game. Kreider, of course, having the goals. Zibanejad's getting the assists. Now it's kind of flip-flop, so it's great to see Kreider throw the apples and Zibanejad gain his hat trick this season. And there was a review to see if it was actually going to be a good goal or not, because Zibanejad got the play started. Tampa was trying to get the puck out of the zone. Zibanejad did a nice little love tap to himself that was just around the shoulder to stay in the offensive zone. Had a nice play to Kreider. Kreider then sets up Zibanejad right in front, right in the crease to get that goal. It was cleared. It was good. Rangers got a power play out of it because the challenge by Tampa failed. It led to nothing, but still Rangers shut them down. Awesome game by Shesterkin. I would say this is probably, if not the best, then truly one of the best well-rounded games the Rangers have had this year. And they're also killing another narrative from years prior, which has been how they perform in day games. The Rangers are just a team that frustrates me. I feel like a Sunday day game, 1 p.m., 12 o'clock, I'm not feeling confident. They just haven't had good history. But from their game, of course, against the Boston Bruins for Thanksgiving to now, it's awesome to see them take advantage of a game like this earlier in the day, because we don't see it too often. But Zibanejad, again, huge story. And also what I liked a lot from this game that we liked a lot going into the game against Edmonton was Alexis Lafreniere being in Artemi's spot in that left wing, in that top 6, took advantage, was throwing the body nice. And Zach Jones had, in my mind, a solid game. He had a hiccup early, was like, hello, welcome to the NHL again, because Braden Point just did a beautiful little deke around him and almost scored. Thankfully, he didn't. But after that, Jones shored up some things, had some nice sticks in the defensive zone, and also his neutral zone game was solid. So Jones, we know what we get from him. It isn't a surprise to see him performing exceptionally well, I would say. So far, it hasn't been anything crazy, but definitely what you would expect out of an NHL caliber defenseman who has endless amount of skill and is truly balanced both defensively and offensively. So really, really strong game by the Rangers. They dominated the faceoff dot too, 61% to 39. Dominated the power play, 2 out of their 3. and also had hits were in favor of Tampa 33-23. Blocks, Rangers dominated that as well. So Tampa got a lot of opportunities, but Igor and the defense really locked it down with it mattered most. Rangers had 18 blocks to Tampa's 3, and Rangers only had 3 giveaways to Tampa's 6. So, Steven, what's your kind of, quick recap, your stance on Zach Jones' season debut, him paired with Niels especially? I know that's like a match made in heaven for someone like you. So what was your just initial reaction to everything that transpired in this one?
I think that it's surprisingly well for all the concerns that there were about those two being paired together. I know a lot of Ranger fans, a lot of hockey fans actually, still feel that you cannot play two smallish players together on defense. But remember 2 years ago, Ryan Lindgren and Adam Fox. Lindgren is only 6 foot and Fox is 5'11". So it's not that different. And I would say Nils Lundkvist is more physical than Ranger fans give him credit for. So this pairing worked really well. And it's hard to complain when you get a shutout against one of the top teams in the league. They also had Cirelli back for this game. They had Vasilevsky back in net. So this was a Tampa Bay team that was almost at full strength. Of course, they're still missing Kucherov, but they had some lethal weapons on offense. And I think Lundkvist and Jones were doing fine. Of course, the last game we're getting into in a second, Lindgren comes back into the lineup, and they decide to make Nils Lundkvist a healthy scratch, move Hayek to the third pairing with Zach Jones. Not sure I really agree with that move, because can you really? I mean, that pairing played so well against Tampa. I really wanted to see them go up against McDavid and Draisaitl. See how they went. They did really well against Stamkos and Palat and Point and Cirelli. I wanted to see them against the top 2 players on offense in the league. I'm pretty sure we'll see it in the coming weeks. It'll be interesting to see how Gallant's going to handle this, because Jones and Lundkvist are better than Nemeth and Hayek, and I think we finally are seeing how good this defense can be. If we just brush aside Hayek for a second, how good this defense can be when Patrick Nemeth is not on the ice.
Bingo. Yes.
And I was hesitant about the signing in the summer. I was willing to give him a chance. I've heard Colorado Avalanche fans and Detroit Red Wings fans complain about how terrible he is. And honestly, he makes Jack Johnson look decent with the way he plays. And him going on the COVID list, you don't wish it on anyone, but it has put Gallant in an awkward situation. Where do you go from here? When Nemeth is healthy, do you take Jones out of the lineup? Because I don't think you can justify taking Jones out of the lineup at the moment. On the other hand, I would still play Lundkvist over Hayek. I think Hayek has been okay. He hasn't been a liability as much as we thought he would be.
Which is awesome. Which I will tip the cap to. He has been better than I expected.
Which is great. But Hayek is, first of all, Hayek is not a player that you want to develop into a top 4 defenseman. Hayek is what he is at this moment. I think if you want to keep Hayek as a 7th defenseman, I'm okay with that. But I'm really looking forward to seeing more of Jones and Lundkvist paired together. And, it's 2021 or 2022. Sorry, it's 2022. This is not the 1980s anymore. You don't need big guys on defense. The thing that Jones and Lundkvist do really well is they skate well. Their positioning is great. And they anticipate hits. Lundkvist has been lined up for a hit a couple of times this season, and he just shrugs it off. And that's because he anticipates it. And you compare that to guys like Hayek and Nemeth, who just aren't as good defensively. Yes, they're bigger, but they're not more physical. And in Nemeth's case, it's nice to have a big body, but if you cannot get there in time to dish out a hit, then what use is your size? And that's my biggest issue with Nemeth at the moment, and to a lesser degree with Libor Hayek. I think Hayek has been better than Nemeth, but that's a low bar. So I really want to see more of Jones and Lundkvist, and I hope we get to see that moving forward. Of course, we have the West Coast trip coming up. But before we go into that, let's recap the Oilers game first.
Yeah, I was a little surprised to see Neal's out for this one, but Gallant has his reasoning. I'm not sure if he made public what it was in his pre or post game. If anyone's aware, by all means send it my way. But I do know that just when you're looking at Neal's and his role on the team right now, he has been healthy scratched array this season, every once in a while, and it hasn't hurt him at all. And also at a game like this, on a back-to-back, I don't think it really hurt much. I think the only argument that could be said is, okay, maybe you have Neal's out on a back-to-back. He's young. You're trying to get him acclimated still. But in saying that, you also keep Jones, who just had his season debut, and for the second straight game back-to-back. So it kind of contradicts if that's kind of maybe the comment that Gallant would say and the reasoning behind it. But no less, it thankfully didn't really change much because Hayek was perfectly fine in this game, and so was Jones. I thought Jones looked very good in this one too, as the Rangers went on to win 4-1 against the Edmonton Oilers. And this was a big one. Look, Edmonton came out and they've been struggling for a bit now. We're aware of that. And they've been a team that, as a casual Oilers fan, because they are my favorite West Coast team, have been really since Taylor Hall arrived there. So give you an idea, it's been a while. And Devin Dubnyk, yes, he was an Edmonton Oiler. Edmonton, unfortunately, has been dealing with a lot of the same struggles where you have the two best players in the world, but you're still struggling to find that consistency in your bottom six. And a team like Edmonton, who if you can get Connor and or Draisaitl down to only 1 point a game, if not less, then you're going to have success. And that's the adversity that they've been facing a lot lately. And we saw that again here. The Rangers did not allow Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl to get on the score sheet. That in itself, you need to give a huge tip of the cap. You do not see that happen often for the two best players in the league. But getting into the game, let's talk about Alexis Lafreniere in the top six again, taking advantage of the opportunities given to him. And thankfully, Mikko Koskinen did his best Brian Elliott job. Koskinen behind the net wasn't able to play the puck while Ryan Strome jumps on it and is able to set up Alexis for the 1T right, down the center into the offensive zone to get an open net goal for his 8th of the year, assisted by Strome's 17th apple and Lindgren's 3rd. Lindgren coming back because he had been out, and also so babyface. It's so funny to see Lindgren without a beard. I feel like he gets 10 years younger. Not as menacing. So we'll see how long it takes for that one to grow out again, as I'm sure he'll like to do. But then we get into the second period, and the Rangers just kept buzzing in this one. They had a lot of similarities as they did in their previous couple games, especially their one last night, the day before, I should say, against Tampa Bay. And Barclay Goodrow gets himself his 7th of the season. A beautiful pass by Alexis Lafreniere across, going from right to left in the offensive zone. That's Goudreau's 7th of the year, assisted by Lafreniere, gets his 3rd assist of the season. This is Laffy's, I believe, 4th multi-point game of his career. And Ryan Strome got his 18th apple as well. So at that point, the Rangers were up 2-0. And then going down the ice, a little bit of a defensive mishap. Ryan McLeod, the former, I believe he used to be a Devil. McLeod gets his 4th of the year, assisted by Benson and Turris. And that was right across the crease. I think Hedl was down there in the defensive zone, and so was Adam Fox, who unfortunately wasn't able to get a stick on it. And it was just a typical cross-crease goal. Nothing that I can really complain too much from goaltending-wise for Georgiev giving up, because Georgiev had a really, really good game. Flashed the leather, got the Georgie chance going. So it was awesome seeing not just Igor thrive lately, but also Georgiev, kind of them doing it back-to-back is a great sight to see. Then we get a third period, and what happens? The Rangers on the power play. Adam Fox holds it on the point. He just lobs it on net, and Chris Kreider does what Chris Kreider has been doing all season long. His 20th of the year, just absolutely insane. Gets that deflected goal and just trickles past the line, too, to beat Koskinen. And that's assisted by Fox's 29th apple of the year. And then, of course, the final goal to cap things off in this one was awfully similar to Mika Zibanejad's goal he had, I believe, a couple games ago, where Ryan Strome trying to get a pass across, it deflects, and it goes in the net. It hit off a skate from the Edmonton Oilers, and that's going to be Strome's 8th of the year, assisted by Goudreau's 9th apple, and Fox's 30th assist of the season. Fox now has 35 points on the year, more than a point per game, and the Rangers just went on to win. Impressive fashion, 4-1, against a rather struggling Edmonton team. I'm aware of that, but for you to still shut down the two best players in hockey, that's a great sight. That's something that does not happen very often, and I'm beyond excited to see how the Rangers are going to go about what's going to be a rather struggling, I'd imagine, or at least tough road trip for the next 5 games. But Rangers got dominated in the faceoff dots, 62-38, didn't phase them. Power play 1 for 5, hits dominated by the Rangers, 29-12. Blocks dominated by the Rangers. Back-to-back games where they're throwing the body. 22 blocks to 3, and giveaways. Edmonton won that one 3-7. But big game for the Rangers. I liked what I saw from Zach Jones. Was getting more comfortable at 15 minutes time on ice in this one, and everyone just seemed like that they were bounced. Some guys that stuck out a little bit on the negative end were just not being as impressive as I'd like them to be. Someone like Philip Peetle, who I know we talked, unfortunately, more negative than positive about this season, that we'll be getting into here shortly. But Steven, what's your reaction to this one? Big game for the Rangers, and that would be their third straight victory.
Yeah, I think Mikko Koskinen wants to forget about this game as soon as possible. A delay of game by shooting the puck over the boards 15 seconds in.
Yeah,
that was not a good start by him. Then the puck he gives up to Strome, the tussle he had with Greg McKegg, and then ending it all with that goal that trickles in on the power play by Kreider. He did not have a good game, but the Rangers were able to keep Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl off the score sheet in the same game. Only the fourth time this season that has happened, so that's worth noting. No play goal, which is, it's his 12th power play goal of the season in only 34 games, which is the second highest at that point of the season in Rangers history. 1988, who had 14. So interesting to see where this ends with Chris Kreider. But if this power play keeps it up, Kreider might just break records for power play goals. I think the record is 25 by Jaromir Jagr.
Yeah, I know Jagr holds it.
Yeah. So interesting to see what's going to happen there. But good win for the Rangers. The one thing, and I didn't want to get into this before we recap the final game. I'm happy with the wins. My only gripe still, and this is something that hasn't been fixed yet, this team still needs to learn how to enter the zone at even strength and, get set up and put some pressure on their opponents, because most of our goals are either on the power play or they come off broken plays. And what I want this team to do is put some pressure on their opponents, tire out your opponents, because once you get to the playoffs, that's how you score. You score by sustained pressure. And at the moment, this team is relying on the power play, goaltending off the rush, and it's working so far. And I'm thrilled that we're number one in the league with the fourth best record. We have some additional games played compared to other teams, of course. Is a win, but I really hope that if we're serious about doing something in the playoffs, that we shore this up. And one big step earlier, this defense just looks light years better without Nemeth on it. And I know he was a third pair defenseman, but he was on to kill. This team just looks more composed. And in the final minutes, defending a lead, I'm no longer, holding my breath when Nemeth is on the ice. It reminds me so much of when Nick Holden was on this team a couple of years ago, and he was always on the ice defending a lead in the final minutes, and I was always holding my breath. And now I'm watching them play the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the final 2 minutes, I wasn't even worried about the shutout. They were playing so well on defense. They were getting the puck early. They were clearing the zone. And this is where Lundqvist and Jones shine compared to Hayek and Nemeth. And this is the biggest reason I want them to play. Because when they get the puck on their stick in the defensive zone, they clear the puck. They are able, no matter if it's forehand or backhand, no matter their position on the ice, they are able to clear the zone. And that's exactly what you need, especially when you're under pressure. So, but yeah, getting 3 wins out of 4 games against playoff teams, that's huge. So hopefully this does something for the team's confidence. Another thing I wanted to point out is that the last 6 power play goals for the Rangers. So I'm not saying that we don't need Panarin. I'm just saying it's interesting to see the power play having a different dynamic where they don't rely on Panarin being the guy holding the puck, if that makes sense.
Which is exactly what you and I have been preaching for, being comfortable with 1-on-1 pair one on the other. You know,
Yeah.
it just makes perfect. It makes so much sense because you don't need to overkill something if you can still prove to have success with only one of them. The Rangers are showing that. I know it's a smaller sample size. Don't get me wrong. But point being is that if this continues for however long he's in protocol, which I hope he's out as soon as possible, obviously, which means things are good to go with him. But if this continues the way that it's been trending, then that just further justifies having a balance on the two, because naturally your top pair is going to get gassed. And when you have multiple power plays in a game, which is happens for the Rangers a lot, and say you are struggling a bit, then you're also having those guys that you're being so reliant on 5-on-5 that are getting even further gassed in Panarin and Zibanejad. So if you can find a way to distribute that time a bit, I say do it. I don't think it causes any harm. I think only good things happen from it. And it just gives you that much more of a dynamic on power play 1 and 2, which comes off more menacing for the opposing clubs and how to properly defend them.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I just want to reiterate that a power play is more than just putting your 5 best players together, because this is what a lot of coaches do. But that doesn't mean that it gives you the best chance to score a goal. And we saw this with Rick Nash. Rick Nash was always a player that needed space to skate into. But on the power play, you don't have that space. And this power play without Panarin has been better mostly because they're unpredictable. The Rangers power play with Panarin became predictable, and players weren't moving, and now it's much more dynamic. And I really like what I'm seeing. So I don't know what they're going to do when Panarin's back. I think they're just going to revert back to the way it used to be on the power play. And
I assume that they will.
And when Nemeth is healthy, I'm pretty sure Nemeth's going to be back in the lineup, and Jones is going to be back on the taxi squad, because ultimately that's how NHL coaches work. That's the decisions NHL coaches make. They fall back on their routines. But until then, I'm really excited with what the Rangers are showing, and these improvements are born out of necessity, and sometimes you need that.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right. And I want to touch on more about how the Rangers performed over these past couple of games. But before I do, just want to thank everyone so much for chiming in to episode 43 of Rangers Review. If you guys are watching the live stream, make sure to drop a like and hit that subscribe button too if you're enjoying the content. If you're watching replay, wherever you get your podcast, leave a review. Thank you guys so much for the support as always. And of course, if you're in the live stream, we'll be taking some questions in our Q&A segment towards the end of the live stream in a little bit. And I also want to shout out Davis Douglas for the $20 donation, saying Happy New Year's. Guys, keep up the great work. Oh, thank you so much, Davis. Really, really appreciate the donation. That means a lot. And I hope the same for you, my friend. Thank you kindly. Shout out to Davis in the chat if you guys are watching live. But Steven, let's break down a couple things from these games as well, because yes, the Rangers are the top team in hockey right now based on the amount of points and how they're getting those wins, because they're tied with the Capitals right now. Capitals have like 8 overtime losses, though, don't have as many regulation wins. So yes, Rangers for the first time since 2016 are holding first in the NHL, which is awesome to see. 22-8-4, 3-1 over the past 4 games. And during this 4-game span, with multiple games without Artemi Panarin, no less, the offense has been there. Rangers scored at least 3 goals in each of these past 4 games, 4 in 3 of the 4. And Kreider, he's had 5 points in his past 4 games, 2 goals, 3 assists. Zibanejad, 4 goals, 1 assist, 5 points in his last 5. Strome, 2 goals, 3 assists, 5 points. Gaudreau, who really stood up against his former team in those last 2 games against Tampa, 3 goals, 2 assists, 5 points. Alexis Lafreniere, I want to talk about Laffy, 2 goals, 1 assist, 3 points. And Adam Fox had 2 apples apiece in the past 2 games for the Rangers, so he has 4 points over the past 4 games. So looking at and taking a note of how the Rangers have been performing here, but specifically when you're looking at someone like Alexis Lafreniere, let's take a moment to talk about his performance in this increased role, because he's been obviously limited in a lot of ways this season, and justified is plenty of it as well. He's someone that we expect to step up some more. And I know that Gallant has not been happy with that third line at times with Hedl. Gauthier has looked great, has just yet to bury things. I feel like he gets a breakaway every game. So Gauthier is not for a lack of effort, it seems, but with someone like Hedel, he's been a little bit of an X factor and a negative, and unfortunately feels like. And I think that's been a detriment to the lack of success for someone like Alexi in games past, where he's getting limited ice time because of who's not just him being on the third pair, but who he's paired with. So to see him be in this top six in this left wing spot and really just take advantage of what's being given to him. Alexi's looked a lot more comfortable. I'm seeing confidence in his game. And I just hope that doesn't diminish, of course, when Panarin is back. And I would even advocate and love to see Alexi potentially playing on the right wing if it doesn't mess him up too much to be staying in this top six. But what has your take, Stephen, been on Lafreniere taking advantage of what's being given to him and knowing that this is, in fact, a step in the right direction for point production and just confidence as a whole? For a young player, first overall pick, for him to have the start of the career the way he has, he'll take any confidence that can be thrown at him. He's always been happy. He's always been joyful in that locker room. But now we're starting to see some results, and rightfully so.
Yeah, I think it's just the line mates he has. The last couple of games, he was able to play with Strome and Goudreau, which is and Gauthier. So, it's just the confidence is a big factor as well. I think that the goals he just scored, let's hope he can build on that. He has scored the 12th most goals by a player aged 20 or younger. We'll see how this translates in the coming weeks. Happen when Panarin's back, because he's playing top 6 minutes because Panarin's out. What's going on when Panarin's back? Is he going back on the third line? Are they going to keep him in the top 6? Because one other change that was long overdue that Gallant has made is take Hunt out of the top 6.
Yes.
We'll see what happens. I mean, the goals he scored were given to him, but everyone. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
Agreed. Yeah, no, we'll see what happens indeed. But I do know, and it just makes me think. My dad joked about this. He said, if this was Buchnevich, he would have missed all those open nets. And I just joke about that because I think about Buch during his time with the Rangers and flailing his head back when he would get open nets. So at least we have someone that knows how to bury the opportunity when it's thrown their way, right? But a couple more things that I want to address is special teams, power play, as we just discussed. Even though that, yes, we would like to see it more balanced when Panarin is back, just because we're having success. So, why go overload on things when in reality you could probably have a more balance than what you do when Panarin is on the top pair with Zibanejad as well. But Rangers power play just continues to thrive. It's been refreshing to see how they've been able to balance things and how Adam Fowles has, of course, been commanding things on the point. Rangers are 7th in power play in the NHL this year so far at 25%, and penalty kill has even been better. And that was something that I had a slight worry going into the year with not having the Rangers' previous assistant. I'm trying to think, Jacques Martin, who did very well and was known for really being a special teams specialist defensively and for PK. Rangers were fine last year, but they're even better so far this year. They're 5th in the league at 84.9%. So what has your take been overall on just seeing the Rangers thriving with this mix of young players and veterans? And again, I know that we don't necessarily want to see all their production solely come from special teams, but the fact that they're constantly taking advantage of these opportunities, which is something that all of us Ranger fans normally know as, oh my goodness, they're just cycling. They can't shoot the puck. They can't get the puck on net. The Rangers are doing a lot of the little things that us Ranger fans have been wanting to see from power plays in years prior. And penalty kill wise, they're just getting the job done no tomorrow, shutting down the best teams in the league. Even if they're losing, it's not because of necessarily they're doing bad on special teams. So what's your take on that?
I think it's something deeper than that. I think this team and its players go out on the ice without the fear of being benched. They don't have to worry. They don't have this nagging thing in the back of their head where they go, oh, if I make a mistake, I might not play the rest of the period. Because under Gerard Gallant, players are given the opportunity. They're given, they're given a little bit more slack than they had under David Quinn. And it has been mentioned a few times, even this season, by several players in interviews. And I think that goes a long way too. but also Lindgren and Fox being a year older on the penalty kill, that's huge. I think on the power play, Adam Fox, last year he won the Norris. I don't think it's controversial to say that this season he's been even better than his Norris winning season. But the thing I really want to talk about is our goaltending, because Shesterkin is probably one of the he's a top 5 goaltender in the league right now. When it comes to save percentage, I think he's second. When you look at his career, and he played 68 games so far in his career, only 4 other goaltenders have a better save percentage after 68 games. Ken Dryden, Tony Esposito, Corey Schneider, and Tuukka Rask.
That's some great company right there.
Shesterkin's save percentage after 68 career games is .925. So he's a starter, and he's a good starter. Now, let's talk about Georgiev for a second, because Georgiev had a bad start to the season, and Ranger fans were complaining about him, and rightfully so, because he wasn't playing well, and people were asking for Keith Kincaid. But since Shesterkin went out with injury against the Sharks, I think it was on December 3rd, Georgiev has stepped in, and his save percentage since December 3rd is .940, or .940 save percentage. So he's been putting up numbers that you would be thrilled about if they came from your starter. So the last month or so, the Rangers have been carried by their goaltending, and not just Shesterkin after he came back from injury. Georgiev has been stellar. Of course, we had a game with Keith Kincaid in Arizona, and Adam Huska had the game against the Colorado Avalanche at the Garden. And especially that game, the Rangers weren't playing well. They came off a back-to-back. They played.
No, they were all over the place. It was
they played the night before in Chicago, and I said it back then, and I'll say it again. There should be at least 24 hours between puck drops.
Yeah, it's ridiculous that there's games where you get less than 24 hours to prep again.
Yes. They didn't come back to New York until 3 a.m., so that game was an automatic loss. But Shesterkin and Georgiev have been great the last month, and I think that really feeds into the penalty kill, because it gives the defenseman the confidence that they need. Oh, okay, so the guy behind me is gonna get whatever's thrown at him. Let me take away as much as I can. I don't have to worry about the guy behind me. And that paired with what I said earlier, that players are sitting on the bench without having to worry about not playing anymore. They're not scared of making mistakes. And you see this in the game of Julien Gauthier the most, I think. He's playing with almost like flair, where he's trying things, and even when he has a breakaway, like last night against the Oilers, he had a breakaway and he missed. Was it against the Oilers or was it against the Lightning where he had a breakaway? No, I think it was against the Lightning. Sorry about that. He had a breakaway against the Lightning, go one-on-one with Vasilevsky, and he misses. Now, last season, he would skate back to the bench and be worried, okay, this is the game for me. I mean, there's 10 minutes to go, but I'm not going to see any more game time. And now he goes back to the bench, still full of confidence, because it happens. Strome had a breakaway last night Strome had a breakaway against the Florida Panthers.
Yes.
And he missed.
Yeah.
It didn't faze him. And that's the big difference between this team and last season's team. The confidence in the locker room, the vibe in the locker room. This is not a collection of players. This is a team. And I think that contributes to our power play and our penalty kill being so strong.
And I'm glad that you tied in the confidence factor with players not worrying, as you attested to, of if they're going to stay on the line that they are, or if they're even going to maybe become a scratch based on a poor misplay or whatever, because that was our biggest gripe all along, unfortunately, with David Quinn. Just the amount of micromanaging he was doing for a team that, given the stages that they were, especially in a full rebuild / retool, it wasn't, you just can't justify it with a lot of it. And
it's a coaching style that works well with college players, because college players aren't at that level where pro hockey players are.
Correct. And it's also different with college players because of not just the role that they have on the club, but knowing that you're still at a quote unquote development stage of even just trying to become a better player to potentially take that next level into pro hockey. And that's more justified. But going on AHL's terms, it just doesn't fit. And we learned that rather quickly as Rangers fans. And, David Quinn wasn't terrible with every aspect of his coaching. I'm aware of that. But that was the biggest concern with him throughout the years that he was with the Raiders, how it just was the same thing over and over again. And Gallant comes in and you just have this structure. And I know that Kakko has said about before that you mentioned among other players that they do have this comfortability level and just entrusting this team and trusting their locker room culture and for them to come together as a group. If you toy with that and you nitpick every single thing that they do, everyone's going to be on their toes, but not to the point where they're going to be on their toes for a positive, but they're on their toes where they're just concerned with how the following night is going to be and what their role is. You need certainties in order to be comfortable. And naturally, when you're comfortable, you have success as long as you're not comfortable in a laziness sense where, say, you've been doing something so long that you're going to just stick with it. You're comfy this way and you don't want to improve your game. No, it's a comfortability, but it's a confidence booster more than anything. And it's awesome to see the Rangers finally adopt that more. And I think you're right to a certain extent. I do think that this does benefit them with special teams and also 5-on-5. And they're going to continue to grow as a group. But knowing the kind of polar opposite approach that the Rangers as a coaching staff have had from a year ago today, it really is telling you that exactly how the Rangers are in the position that they are at the time of recording this, being the top team in the AHL. It's not for lack of effort. And you can just tell that they're vibing off of one another. And truly, it's awesome to see how they're going to continue doing this throughout the year and what's hopefully going to continue to be a very improving and positive season. But one last topic that I want to get in with you on a little bit more of a deep dive before we take questions and get out of here looking at the upcoming schedule is Zach Jones, right? I know that we talked plenty on Zach Jones, but really just appreciate how well he was during this 2-game span. I apologize, I might sneeze, so let's see if I will or not. I did. Okay, but Zach Jones over these 2 games really, really impressed me. Just in the sense of you get your call up last second. He came from the taxi squad, was here, and back-to-back games, not phased whatsoever. I think that Braden Point play was the only thing that was like, okay, that wasn't great. And to do that, to have that done to you by one of the best players in the AHL, you can't slight him one bit, in my opinion. So to see Jones come in, be comfortable, as we've been talking about, and to really go on from the question that I know someone asked in the donation earlier in the live stream was that if he is going to now be an everyday player in this lineup, if he's solidified here, like if it's CERN, my unfortunate answer is I don't think it's going to be that way based on how coaches operate to what you said. But can you justify it right now with his performance over these couple games to at least give him more of a leash to continue seeing how he will do, maybe going into this away trip? I say yes, you absolutely do, because Jones has clearly not been a liability, and he's someone that's going to hopefully be a part of this defensive core in the years going forward. So overall, what has impressed you the most about Jones just over these couple games span, and what are you hoping at least to see going in the games forward?
Yeah, just his ability to move the puck, I think, is more important than whatever he brings in terms of hits. That one play against Braden Point in the first minute of the game, it happens. That happens to the best defenseman in the league. I've seen players pull that on Victor Hedman. So I'm not going to hold that against him. But like I said earlier, Lundqvist and Jones have the ability to clear the zone and relieve the pressure. And this is something that K'Andre Miller struggled with early in the season. And I brought that up several times. K'Andre Miller is often trying to make a fancy play instead of just making the right play. And Jones and Lundqvist, their first and foremost task is when they have the puck and they're under pressure to get the puck out of the zone instead of trying to retain it. And Nemeth is just too slow for this level. Nemeth is not an NHL defenseman, in my opinion.
He is the same exact thing that the Rangers have been doing for years, with just having that one placeholder on defense that is more of a net negative than a net positive. And it's
Exactly.
frustrating because when the Rangers did that signing, we were trying to be optimistic, but it's like 3 years for a guy where you know what his role is going to be, and you know the depth of this Rangers defense. It's heads. I know you want certainties and you want things back up on. When you see a veteran, you're automatically inclined. That's how the NHL works. But man, oh man, the Rangers have just been adopting this philosophy for, I feel like, my entirety of being a fan, and it's nothing short of frustrating, I may say.
Yeah, he reminds me a lot of Jeff Voivodka.
Yes.
It just never clicked in New York with him. He wasn't really an NHL caliber defenseman anymore, and it's the same with Nemeth. Hayek, I think, has bounced back nicely the last couple of games, but there's also a reason why Hayek was the 7th defenseman up to like a week or two ago.
Agreed.
The Rangers wanted Lundqvist to play. They wanted Jones to play. They want Schneider to play. This is the reason why Jones and Schneider and also Robertson were in the AHL. But now you get to the point where your young AHL defensemen are clearly outplaying the I don't want to call Hayek a veteran, but I consider Hayek an established player. I think he played more than 100 NHL games by now.
Yeah. He's I would say he's established. Yeah.
So he's an established player. Like Nemeth is a veteran, Hayek is an established player, and in come these kids that outplay your established defenseman and your veteran defenseman. You have to go with your best players. I don't understand why this is such a controversial take.
I don't understand it either. And the only reason why we're having this discussion is because of the experience these kids have. That's the reality of it. It comes solely down to experience.
2 years ago, we had a rookie pairing, and they broke it up because they wanted Hayek to play with Fox. They broke up Lindgren. I think they sent Lindgren back to the AHL, and then Lindgren came back up, and he was around the same age as Jones is now. We had a rookie pairing with Lindgren and Fox, and it worked out fine.
I think it's important to look at what the Rangers are doing and is for them to stop, shooting themselves in the foot. They've went through these mistakes, I feel like, countless times. Let's try to avoid that. Is that ever going to be avoided in like the near future? You would hope so. But again, I'm probably speaking more so out of strictly just hope versus realism. It's one of those things.
When I speak as a fan, I say yes. When I speak as someone who's followed hockey for the last 30 years, I say probably not.
Yeah.
Because this always happens, and every team does this. We signed Tanner Glass for 3 years.
Don't get me started on Tanner Glass, please. Please.
There are teams that gave up prime assets for Eric Goodbranson.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned this trade before, but the Oilers gave up a 16th overall pick for Griffin Reinhart, who was lost in the expansion draft 2 years later, or a year later.
In defense, let's not bring Peter Chiarelli moves and acquisitions into this discussion. No, that in itself is a bit more of an anomaly.
One of many examples. How about the Washington Capitals giving up Philip Forsberg to get Martin Erad?
I'm aware.
It
was an awesome trade.
Awesome for the Nashville Predators. General managers aren't perfect, and I see this argument made sometimes on social media where if someone disagrees with a decision by the head coach or disagrees with a decision by Chris Drury, that people come in and say, well, Chris Drury is the general manager, so he probably knows better than you. Well, general managers aren't perfect. Head coaches aren't perfect. They also make mistakes. They don't have the answers for everything. Same with scouts. Look at the draft. Just look up a random draft from 10, 15 years ago and go through the first round and see how many of those names you don't even recognize because they never played in the NHL.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that fans know more than pro scouts or know more than a head coach or a general manager. I'm just saying that just because someone is hired by an NHL team doesn't mean that every decision they make is the right one. That's my point.
Absolutely. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that one out. We all have gripes about and frustrations with moves by front offices or just what they're preferring coaching staff wise, among other things. Like that's natural. That's part of being a fan too, to evaluate these things. And you'd hope that your team acknowledges them too before it goes down a slippery slope. And unfortunately, the fact is that a lot of times when we do acknowledge these things, they don't. They just continue with that stance or that belief until it gets to the point where it's so rotten that they have no other choice but to cut ties with whatever they're doing at that moment. But again, it's here nor there. It varies on the coach and it varies on the GM.
And sometimes it works, and sometimes it makes your general manager look like a genius. When Sather signed Anton Strawman in 2011, I don't think anyone had any expectations. The guy was just cut from a PTO by the New Jersey Devils. I think he joined the Flyers for training camp in the summer, and he was dismissed after a few days. And then the Rangers signed him for 3 years.
Yeah.
And it worked out great. It made Sather look like a genius.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think anyone could have predicted that. When two other NHL teams, literally in the months leading up to that contract, say Anton Strawman's not good enough for the NHL, and then the Rangers sign him for 3 years, and he plays his way into a $25 million contract with the Tampa Bay Lightning. It just goes to show you that general managers are sometimes right, but other general managers are wrong. And if, as a fan, you have an opinion, you shouldn't be afraid to voice your opinion just because you disagree with what the general manager does. It doesn't make you any less of a fan. And if you have certain ideas that clash with what the organization's doing, just go for it. Just have a conversation. And we need to accept that sometimes there are people in discussions we have that you disagree with. And it doesn't mean that they're wrong. It doesn't mean that you're wrong. It just means that you have different opinions.
It's called an opinion. God forbid we have it, right?
They're not facts. And discourse is what makes hockey more fun. I love having discussions. Before we recorded, I had a chat with you, and we don't always agree. But that's fine. Sometimes you have different opinions, and that's fine. And I know that I'm not perfect. I make mistakes, and I make evaluations that turn out to be wrong. So what? I'm a fan. I'm enjoying this. I love talking about this, and I want more of that. I want to have conversations on social media. I want to see debates between fans without sentences like, "Oh, you're an idiot," or "Oh, do you even play hockey?" Because that's not relevant at all.
It's just the same. It's the same kind of reply over and over again for someone that doesn't either want to get involved or doesn't have the knowledge or information to back it. It's common, but I think when we're talking about wanting to have this discourse and have these discussions, they're important, and that's exactly why we're going to get into our Q&A segment now. Because let's find out what the people that are in the live stream had to say. So if you guys are to this point, just over an hour in to episode 43 Rangers Review, thank you guys for chiming in, whether you're watching live or in replay, wherever you get your podcast. If you guys have questions, we'll be taking them for the next couple minutes before we wrap things up with the upcoming schedule for the Rangers, and then give you guys an idea on when we'll be back here and recording again. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you with everything you said, Steven. It's important to have these discussions, regardless on if we agree or disagree. And even if it's maybe a hot take or opinion that isn't going to bode well for others regarding your favorite team in the sports world, it's okay to have that take, because at the end of the day, who knows? You might be right. The amount of times that you see comments out there on social media, including myself, where you'll say something that, everyone will give you backlash for, and then in reality, that either becomes the reality or you were just right in the end, one way or the other. It's easy to be stubborn instead of being open-minded when you're passionate about something, but that stubbornness, that closed-mindedness is what's going to bite you in the ass at some point.
Yep.
Let's see.
Questions?
Let's see if we got any questions here in the live stream. We did touch on Jones, on if we think he's going to be, solidifying this lineup. Again, we both hope he does, but I don't think he does. I will say this to you, Steven. Do you think that Jones is going to play a couple of the games in this away trip, or do you think that no?
Depends on when Nemeth is back. When Nemeth is back, I don't see them dropping Hayek out of the lineup, because Hayek has been playing on the top pair with Fox, and I think that holds some value. And quickly to go into this, we as fans look at it from an outside perspective. We are not connected to these players. We have no personal attachments. We don't talk to these players in the locker room. Coaches talk to these players every day. they have sometimes have a better connection with one player than with another, and the personal aspect of it impacts their decision too. They're human, the same way we are human. We have a group of friends, and sometimes we listen to one friend and we believe him before we believe someone else, and no one's impartial. That's just not how human beings work. I think Zach Jones is going to play more games this season. I don't know when that will be. What I am convinced about is that Zach Jones is here for the long run. I think Jones, Schneider, and Lundqvist are going to be here for a couple of years. And I think the odd man out, it's going to be either Lindgren or Trouba. I think Trouba, with the $8 million cap hit, is a prime candidate in 2024 to be moved, assuming Braden Schneider is ready to step into that role because they're similar stylistically. And Lindgren, in 4 or 5 years, I could see them moving on from Lindgren and not make the same mistake they made with Dan Girardi. Because Lindgren is the type of player that doesn't really age well after 30. And that's not a knock on Lindgren. It's just the type of player he is. We saw it with Girardi. We saw it with Callahan. We saw it with Brandon Proust. We see it with Milan Lucic. Certain players just don't age well.
Yeah, no, you're right, especially when you're using the body more. And that's what we love about certain players that have those type of roles where you're going all in every single shift. But naturally, there's a shelf life with people like that. And that's okay. That's normal in hockey.
It's just the way it is. Yep, nature of the game.
We got a bunch of questions, so let's get to them. Jack says, when do you think Othmann makes his NHL debut? You probably have a stronger take on this than I do, but just from the forefront, when I think about Othmann, his role right now, I don't see him making his NHL debut for probably at least 2 seasons. I think at the earliest, I think 3 is something I'm most comfortable about. But if I'm saying earliest 2 seasons from now, most comfortable, I would say 3.
Yeah, when he was drafted, I said 3 years. 2024 was my prediction. So at the end of the 2023-24 season. However, in the last couple of months, there have been some developments with the Flint Firebirds. They've been reluctant to trade him in the OHL, which I understand from their point of view, because Brennan Othmann is their best player. He wins them games. He puts people in the seats. He is the main reason they're selling tickets, because players want to see Brennan Othmann. He's a first-round NHL pick. He was drafted by an original 6 team. That's for marketing purposes. That's great to have, and it helps you win games. And ultimately, it's still about money in the OHL. These teams need to make up some money because they lost an entire season. So I get it. However, I don't think he has much to learn in Flint. I think if he wants to learn something new, he might do it in a different environment where he could actually be on a contending team in the OHL. If the Flint Firebirds are still reluctant to trade him to another team, I could see the Rangers having him on the NHL roster to start next season. That doesn't mean he will spend the entire season on the roster, but his contract can slide this season and next season. So they could have him on the team for like a month or two, have him play a couple of games, see how he does at this level. And if they are happy with him, then they might just keep him on the team. If they think that a season in the NHL is better for his development, even if it's as a healthy scratch, practicing with NHL players, if they think that's better for his development than spending another year in the OHL where he's already dominating, I could see that happen. So that's something to keep in mind.
That's fair. I'm glad you brought up his stats with Flynn, because I wasn't as aware of that. So that very well could be an X factor in him playing with the Rangers sooner than I think a lot of Ranger fans, including myself, would have assumed originally. So we're going to see how that plays out. That's a good point, though. Again, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter exactly if he's going to be scratched or not, as long as the Rangers feel that's the best for his development. Because to your point, if he's going to be stuck in juniors and he's already proved everything, and instead he could be with the Rangers team and gain acclimated and understand what it's like to be with the club and to be practicing with them, that might do more positives than negative for sure. So,
and this is what the Islanders did with Matt Barzal, actually.
Yes.
They had him on the team. Turned out he wasn't ready yet, so they sent him back. And yeah, this is why the slide rule exists. You get to try out a player for a couple of games, handful of games, and as long as he doesn't play more than 9 games, you can send him back, and the contract will still slide. So they did it with Philip Hedl when they drafted him in his first year. Um, if I remember correctly, they did a similar thing with Anthony Duclair in his second season. Um, so yeah, we'll see what happens. I think there's a good possibility that he might play a couple of games. He won't be an NHL regular until 2023, 2024, though.
Yeah, I can agree with that too. All right, we got a bunch more, so let's try to do a little bit of a speed run through these, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go here. Do I think Hedel has not been having a good year is because he should be playing wing instead of center? Honestly, Mike, I don't agree that that would be the X factor for him. I honestly think with Hedel, one, he's looked like that he's been standstill, if not regressing slightly to what we've seen from last season or even some seasons prior. And I also think that it goes in hand with just his utilization. Hedel is someone that I do feel confident saying he would thrive. Of course, he's with more advanced players. If he's in the top 6 on the wing, I think that that would bode him well. I don't think that would hurt his development. But the Rangers are in a spot where they don't have really that role or that expectation for him like they do with Kakko, Lafreniere. Hedel's in really a tough spot where he's going to have to continue dealing with being in that limited role on that third line and playing with guys that a lot of times are either unestablished or just really aren't going to benefit you too much. Like Lafreniere and Gauthier have all the talent in the world, but these are still guys that are still trying to really get themselves in a rhythm at the NHL level. And I do think that having that young line has proven to not benefit the Rangers that much at this point, and why Gallant has been reluctant in giving them some big ice time. And Hedel, unfortunately, has stood out a bit. He has been one that looks a little lackadaisical out there, is not showing as much effort as maybe we would have hoped, or he's just so hit or miss. Games could completely go by, and you don't even realize he was on the ice. I think just not showing really any true signs of improvement over the past couple weeks. I think Ranger fans would even say farther than that, depending on who you talk to. Like Steven, I'm sure, would agree that there's something that needs to hopefully change with him and rather quick. But yeah, he's been underwhelming, to put it lightly.
Yeah, and we talk about this with Lafreniere. Lafreniere is playing better the last couple of games because he has better line mates. And the same thing could apply to Philip Hedel. Where are you going to play him? He's not going to play on the wing ahead of Lafreniere or Panarin or Kreider. He's not going to play on the right wing ahead of Kakko. And at the moment, if there was ever a chance for him to get a shot in the top 6, it was the moment Hunt was demoted. But they replaced him with Barclay Goodrow, and that seems to be working out. So other players are taking their opportunities and running with it. And that puts Hedel in a tough spot because unless you put him on the wing on the third line, I don't see another spot for him on this team. He's going to either center the third line, or we have to figure out something when we have an injury or a player leaving. The out of the box scenario is when Panarin comes back that you would move Kreider to the third line to give Hedel a more established player to feed off of. Most of Kreider's points come on the power play, so those won't be affected by him moving to the third line. I mean, I'm just thinking out loud here. You could put Panarin on the top line with Zibanejad and Kakko.
No, you lost me.
Keep the Lafreniere Strome Goudreau line as long as they're hot.
Yeah.
The moment that changes, you swap Lafreniere and Panarin. But like I said, unless you do something really unorthodox, really outside the box, I don't see another role for Hedel on this team.
I agree. Yeah, wholeheartedly. I don't agree with even really doing Panarin and Zibanejad. We've been here, done that. Well, you know my stance. You know my stance, and rightfully so. It's not like it's not justified. What I have to say about it. But all right, bunch of questions. We'll take 4 to 5, and then that's going to wrap up the Q&A segment. So if we don't get to your question in this live stream, if you guys are watching live, we do apologize, but we have to get only a certain amount given time, and then we have to, of course, take a quick look at the upcoming schedule before we wrap things up. So I'm going to get a 4 or 5 quick speed run. Is getting the bet is Gettinger, the best person to call up. How close are we to see Morgan Barron and Paul-Yonemi? Gettinger just has the more NHL experience. That's literally all there is behind it. Morgan Barron is someone that we will see. I think he's right up there with Gettinger for sure. Paul-Yonemi, I do think we'll get a taste maybe at some point this year. He's had, I think, what would be a very solid season so far in the AHL. He's been scoring some goals, liking what I'm seeing from him, but it doesn't bring you that defensive ability that guys like Barron, Gettinger can bring you to the same level, which is why I wouldn't expect much from him yet. So, would you agree with that assessment, Steven?
I think the call up depends on what kind of player you're looking to replace.
Oh, yeah. Oh, obviously. Yes.
If like Kevin Rooney is on the COVID list, so you call up Tim Gettinger. If you have to replace Philip Heel, you call up Morgan Barron. If Julien Gauthier is out, you go with Lauri Pauniemi. It's just they have different roles. There's different expectations. So it just depends on who you're looking to replace. I don't think it's as simple as having a list with first, second, and third call up.
Yeah. All right, Mark. Mark, thanks so much for chiming in. Really appreciate that.
Mark.
Shout out to Mark. Tyler, is Gallant a Jack Adams finalist, and can Buck Showalter do as good of a job as Gallant? Yes, I think Gallant at this point is a Jack Adams finalist, which is pretty cool considering the fact that he hasn't been in the league for over a year now. So you'll love to see that. As of now, I don't think you can justify otherwise given what he's done for this Rangers team. And yes, I do think that Buck Showalter can provide just as good, if not a better job, because he's going in a very similar situation for a team, even though I will say Mets are going to be in a far more win now stage next season than the Rangers currently are. But yeah, I agree on both those wholeheartedly. I'm very excited to see what Buck Showalter is going to do. He's a new manager, the new head coach for the New York Mets, Stephen, in case you're not aware. Okay. But he's a veteran. He managed for 20 years. So like I
had no clue.
I know you didn't. That's why I'm throwing it your way now. But yes, I agree with that one, Mark. I appreciate you chiming in. Let's see. Do we think we should trade a first-round pick to improve our right wing before or around the deadline? No, I do not. Don't even think you sniff the idea. This is not Glenn Sather time, especially for a team that, even though that they're having a very good season and maybe they're going to surprise people come playoffs, I'd rather them surprise us than for us to go into playoffs with the mentality that we are set in stone a Stanley Cup finalist this year or a beyond deep playoff run team. The Rangers operate like that. I think that they're going to set themselves up for failure when they are still in the very beginning stages of now starting to be in this win now stage. I'm not on board whatsoever with partying with a first round pick for a winner at this point.
That's the type of trade you make when you're one trade away from being a contender. You're one trade away from winning a cup. Bingo. 2015, when you traded for Keith Yandel, that was the right move. 2015, yeah. The same summer, the Chicago Blackhawks traded a first for Antoine Vermette. It was the perfect move for them because they were one trade away. This team, unfortunately, is not one trade away from winning at all. If you're going to give up a first-round pick, it better be for a player that's going to be here longer than just a couple of months.
Yes. Agreed. Okay. Going to get two more questions in before we wrap this up. Davis, thank you so much again for the donation earlier. Really means a lot. What has been the biggest surprise and biggest disappointment with the New York Rangers so far this season? All right. To kind of wrap this up in a nutshell, I would say biggest surprise to this point in my mind is probably just the consistency in the sense of the Rangers are first in the league right now. I did not expect that through getting close to halfway through the season. So I think Gallant, his impact to the extent of what it has been so far is a big surprise, just seeing how much things have changed in a short period of time and with basically the same exact roster, right? Biggest disappointment this season, I would say, it's really hard to gauge. I would honestly almost argue Filipino to this point. And I think it says more so about the lack of true disappointments the Rangers have this point. You could also say that the biggest disappointment is Lafreniere and or Kakko not being point per game players yet. If you want to go down that route, everyone, if you had that belief going into the season, of course you're going to be disappointed. I don't really think the Rangers have a massive disappointment so far this season, but if I have a nitpick one, I would say Hedl is towards the top of that list just because of the lack of production on a night-to-night basis we get from him.
Yeah, for me, the biggest disappointment is probably Shesterkin's injury because it's a recurring one. and
That's
it
fair.
has me a little worried. Biggest surprise, Kreider. The guy has 20 goals after 34 games, 12 on the power play. He's putting up numbers, and for someone that looks into the historic comparisons of what our players are doing, if I go through 96 seasons of Rangers hockey and I only find 3 players that are at this stage of the season comparable to what Kreider is doing, that tells you how rare it is what he's putting together. So Kreider is definitely a positive surprise.
Yes. And I'm actually glad he brought up Kreider because he completely blew over my head. I would say he's the biggest surprise too. He just didn't cross my mind at all. So outside of
Yeah.
coaching, player wise, it's Kreider first and foremost. Let's see. All right. Last question we'll be taking is from, I'm assuming it's Tomas or Thomas. That looks, the spelling reminds me of it being Finnish. Is it? Do you think it is, Steven? Yeah.
That's a finish.
Yeah.
That's
The TUO right away is what makes me think Finnish.
Yeah.
Okay.
Scrabble and Finnish must be hilariously easy. You just add some vowels in the middle and
you're good to go.
You're good.
That's fine. How would trying out Lafreniere and Strome be? What do you think, Steven?
I think we tried Lafreniere on the right side already. I don't think it worked. That doesn't mean that we cannot try it again. At this stage, though, I don't think the right side has a hole to be filled by Lafreniere. You have Kako who's doing decent enough. Goudreau, who's currently one of the better players on this team, who's playing as a right winger on the second line. When Panarin comes back, it's going to be really tough to find a spot for Lafreniere that's not on the third line.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that one too. Laffy is someone that I want to see in that top 6, but if comfortability wise, if he is performing his best at left wing, if right wing is a little bit of a detriment to him, then by all means, I want what's best for him and his development.
I do like, as an alternative, Lafreniere and Goudreau on the third line, because Lafreniere and Goudreau are playing well together.
Yes, I agree. I agree with that too. I think it'll be good to have more of a balance with the top 9 overall too. If you cannot be so top loaded with your top 6 and put Goudreau with Laffy, I think Goudreau is the kind of player too that would really help someone like Laffy with what we've been seeing in games lately, and just not having that reliance on 3 very young players who are trying to take that next level in their game, still trying to get acclimated for that matter with him, Gauthier, and Hedel. It's exciting when you look at it on paper, but to see the performance we've had at this point, I think it's justified that having someone like Goudreau would actually be a much better fit.
It's a video game line.
Yep, exactly.
With all due respect.
And I think as a counter, you could even make the argument of putting Gauthier potentially in that top 6 along with Strome and Panarin to bring some size to that line too and see what it brings you for a guy that just is a high flyer, can crash that net, and of course can bring some good offensive production. I don't see that as a negative. Pardon me.
And if you do that, you make Goudreau the center on the third line and move Hedel to the wing. And then we solve 2 issues that were brought up in our questions today.
Bingo. Okay, I like that. Okay, let's see. Go on. Get on it, baby. Let's go. But that's going to wrap things up Q&A time. So before we get out of here, folks, we're going to take a look at the upcoming schedule. The Rangers have 3 games that they're going to be playing before we record next week, which will probably be right around the same exact time next Tuesday, if I had to imagine, the 11th of January. But the Rangers do have a big road trip coming up. Their next 5 games are on the road, but the next 3 before we talk again are starting in Vegas this Thursday, 10 p.m. Eastern time. That's going to be a fun one to potentially stay up for, right, Steven?
I'm going to sleep first, wake up at 10 to 3, watch the game, and then start my day at work.
And that's going to unfortunately be your routine for basically a week's span, because then, of course, they have their game on the 8th in Anaheim, 10 o'clock Eastern time, same time. And then against the LA Kings on Sunday, Monday the 10th at 10:30. So big games for the Rangers. These are teams that all, of course, especially Vegas and Anaheim, can definitely give the Rangers a run for the money. Anaheim has been surprising to a certain extent this year. They've been having those high flyers, Troy Terry had, I think, like 18 points in the first 18 games of the year. He was doing great. He's still been rolling. Trevor Zegras is looking great. Sonny Milano, I've always loved Sonny Milano. I believe he's a Long Island native too, has been doing really well in an increased role with Anaheim this year. They even got Vinny Lettieri, the former New York Ranger too. So they got some nice pieces there.
I look forward to the Kako Zegras talks during the broadcast for that one.
Oh, it's inevitable, of course. Anything regarding two guys from the same time, same draft, etc. That's always going to happen. But let's take a look at these 3 games, starting with Vegas 2. I think the Rangers in this stretch are going to go. I think the Rangers are going to go 2-0-1.
And I'm going to go with 2-1-0.
Okay. Goals, I'll pick this time, I guess, because you picked last time. Out of these 3 games, I think the Rangers are going to score. I'm going to just go with the safe number. I'm going to say 9. I'm going to go with that safe number 9.
9.
Yep.
Then I'll go with 10.
Okay. All right. So this is me hoping that they score 3 apiece each game and, get the wins. So we'll see. But 2-0-1 for me, 2-1-0 for Steven.
Imagine the 3rd game. The Rangers scored 9 goals, and then they get 5 seconds to go.
Wait. Repeat that. I'm sorry. You lagged out.
Imagine the Rangers score 9 goals in those 3 games. The Rangers have a 2-goal lead. Who are playing the 3rd game?
LA.
The Kings. The Kings pull their goalie, and we get an empty netter in the final seconds to make it a 10th.
I mean, that only matters if the Rangers went in your favor record-wise, 2-1. If they went 2-0-1,
yeah.
then
So,
I can live with it.
Just so everyone's aware, the goal differential is only counts when neither of us has the record.
Correct. Right. Yeah. So if neither of us get the record
so
right,
if they go,
a tie, maybe.
If they go 3-0 or 1-2 or 1-1-1, that's when the number of goals will be the deciding factor.
Yes, that's correct. But that's going to wrap up Rangers Review. Before we get out of here, it is episode number 43. And this is something that I actually have some confidence in because I remember a bunch of 43s for the Rangers because I feel like a lot of them have been during my time as a fan. So
there have been 7. If you can name 4, I'd be impressed.
Okay, we got Marty Biron. That's first man that came to my mind. I think Libor Hayek. He was there for a season or 2. Mm-hmm. Ryan Callahan. A lot of people forget that Ryan Callahan used to be the number.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's one more. He was. I always remember him not even for his Rangers tenure, but because he won the cup with Boston, but wasn't able to get his name ingrained on the cup because he missed by like a certain amount of games.
And he now plays in Russia.
Oh no, you're losing me now. Wait.
What position are you thinking of?
Defense. I know who it is. I'm just blanking it.
Then we're talking about the same player. Yeah. I know. If you can get this is the 4th. It's not Nick Holden. It's the other one.
Oh, Steven Kampfer, right?
There you go, Steven Kampfer.
There we go.
Honestly, I thought you're gonna mention Colin Blackwell.
Oh my God! See, of course I forget Blackwell. No, I would have had 5. That's unfortunate.
So, moving backwards, the 7 players that were number 43 for the Rangers in official games, so it doesn't include preseason. Colin Blackwell, Libor Hayek, Daniel Catenacci in 2017-2018.
I have no clue who that is.
Steven Kampfer, Martin Biron, Ryan Callahan, and the first one to wear number 43 as a Ranger in 2004 was Jason McDonald.
Okay. Yeah, I did good. Yeah, I'm proud of that.
Jason McDonald played a whopping 4 NHL games in his career.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I would be perfectly fine with people not remembering this guy. 0 goals, 0 assists, -1, 19 penalty minutes. and an average time on ice of 8 minutes and 11 seconds in his illustrious NHL career.
I just can't believe I forgot Blackwell.
I cannot believe you forgot him either. I thought you were going to get Biron.
In hindsight, do you think that you would have gone at least 4 or 5 of them if you didn't look at it? I know it's probably hard to try to think of because of the fact that you read it probably now.
I knew Callahan, I knew Biron, I knew Kampfer, I knew Hayek, and I knew Blackwell. Catanacci, I don't remember, and McDonald, it's 4 games in the NHL. Who remembers this guy? Who remembers Jason McDonald?
Yeah, shout to Captain Cali though. That's the one that I think would have stumped most people.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, folks. Awesome. Great episode. Positives in this one. Rangers on a 3-game winning streak. We'll see if they extend it into their next couple 3 games. We'll be back here right around a week from now, hopefully next Tuesday, God willing, right around the 11th. So thank you guys so much for listening, watching, wherever you get your podcast. This was Rangers Review episode 43. And Steven, let's go Rangers.
Let's go Rangers.
Peace out, guys.